Beautiful. Thank you, Jasmine. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right. Welcome. I'm Abhi Janamanchi. I'm one of the ministers serving Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist congregation. It is a deep honor to be with you this afternoon as we gather to celebrate the life of George Durland. On behalf of George's family, his daughter Karen, her husband Scott, and daughter Nora, his son Eric, and his wife Allison, and their children. Who are their children? These young men, Eddie and Nate, along with extended family and dear friends, and George's Cedar Lane family of friends, I offer a warm welcome to you. Your presence here today matters. It speaks to the love that surrounds George and the many connections his life helped to shape. If this is your first time in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, you are especially welcome today. Our religious tradition is shaped not by a single creed, but by covenant, by the promises we make to journey together, to seek meaning, and to care for one another. And at moments like this, we do not rush to tidy and easy answers. We make room for memory, for grief and gratitude, for laughter and tears, for the full, complicated, beautiful range of what it means to be human. And it feels important to say at the outset, this will not be a somber afternoon. George, as you know, had a wonderful sense of humor. He valued perspective, appreciated a good laugh, even some good inappropriate jokes, and understood that even in serious moments, joy still has a place. And that spirit of George will be very much in presence here today. So through words and stories, music and song, we will try to weave together a portrait of George's life, knowing that no single hour can hold all that he was. Still, we gather to honor the life he lived, the people he loved, the values he stood for, the causes he supported, and the communities he helped build. And in doing so, to be gently reminded of how we too might live. And so we pause, we turn aside from our usual routines, we turn our faces again toward the life we are here to remember. And we do so with gratitude, with affection, and with love. Welcome. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light the chalice as a symbol of memory, love, and community. And today, this flame marks the shared space we create, a space held by connection, by care, and the love that continues. So as George's grandchildren, Eddie, Nate, and Nora, come forward to kindle the chalice, I invite you all to rise as you're able in body or in spirit and join in the words that are printed in your order of service. We light this chalice in loving memory of our friend and spiritual companion, George Durland, in gratitude for the love his life inspired and for the gift of life we share. May this flame remind us of the community we create by being together, and may it honor the mystery and blessing of life. Thank you. You may be seated.
The sun is sinking low in the sky above Ashokin. The pines and the willows know soon we will part. There's a whisper in the wind of promises unspoken, and a love that will always remain in my heart. My thoughts will return to the sound of your laughter, the magic of laughing as one. And a time we'll remember long ever after, the moonlight and music and dancing are done. Will we climb the hills once more? Will we walk the woods together? Will I feel you holding me close once again? Will every song we've ever sung stay with us forever? Will you laugh in my dreams or my heart? Until then, under the moon, the mountains lie sleeping. Over the lake, the stars shine. They wonder if you and I will be keeping the magic and music or leave them behind.
That was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. George Sanford Durland was born on March 9, 1934 in Franklin, New Jersey, to George Reeve Durland and Frances Cornelia Sanford Durland. He grew up near Lake Mohawk, and that landscape stayed with George all his life. As a boy, he fished, swam, learned to dive, and skated when the lake froze. He spent long hours outdoors, noticing what lived there, what changed with the seasons, and how the world worked up close. He graduated from Newton High School in Sparta in 1952 and went on to Cornell University, where he earned a degree in electrical engineering in 1957. During college, George spent summers working at the Franklin Zinc Mine, where his father worked. It was physical, practical labor, and it suited him. He liked understanding things from inside out. And after college, George served in the Navy, and in 1959, he joined IBM as an engineer. And that job brought him to Washington, D.C., and set the course for a long career. He remained with IBM until his retirement in 1990, working steadily and thoughtfully, and at times overseas, including assignments in France and Germany. George and Elsie met on a blind date arranged by friends in the early 1960s. They married on November 28, 1964, and settled in Potomac, Maryland, where they would live for nearly 60 years. In 1969, George and Elsie moved to Stuttgart, Germany, for 3 years. They traveled, explored, and built memories that stayed vivid long after they returned. And together they raised 2 children, Karen and Eric, and family life was active, curious, and often outdoors. Trips were rarely just trips. They were chances to explore. There were summers at Bethany Beach, time at Deep Creek Lake, hikes in the Smoky Mountains, skiing trips, long journeys out west, and days spent on Smith Beach by the bay. George shared what he loved without instruction manuals. He liked pointing things out: wildflowers, birds, butterflies, and moths, rocks, and minerals. He let curiosity lead. And that curiosity deepened over time. He became an active member of the Rock Club. He served as president and was known for demonstrations and displays, especially of fluorescent minerals. Under the right light, ordinary-looking stones revealed unexpected colors. George loved that moment of discovery, and he enjoyed sharing it. Music was another constant. George and Elsie were devoted listeners. They held symphony subscriptions and went to concerts regularly. George was a longtime member of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist congregation. He and Elsie joined in 1972. He sang in the choir for many years, participated in science and religion, led wildflower and bird walks during Spring Bee, and for many years was a member of the Gourmet Club, a circle of friends who gathered around good food, good wine, and good conversation. He spent time at Great Falls watching for eagles and paying attention to what others might pass by. George was known as a quiet teacher. He showed rather than told. He helped without making a point of it. He fixed things, explained things, and shared what he knew when someone was interested. People often left those conversations having learned something new. George died on December 6, 2025, at the age of 91. He was preceded in death by his beloved Elsie and his brother William. George's life was marked by attention to nature, to music, to ideas, to people. He moved through the world curious, observant, and quietly engaged. And those who spent time with him learned, often without realizing it, how to look a little more closely themselves. Please rise now in body and/or in spirit to sing Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee, number 29.
Hi, everybody. Okay, the sun, there's a glare. So nice to see all of you. So many friends and family from so many different parts of our lives. It's quite moving. Thank you for being here. It seems totally appropriate to have Dad's celebration of life service at Christmas time. He loved this holiday, especially German-style Christmas that we learned when we lived in Stuttgart. We would always have a balsam fir, and the branches would be like really far apart, almost Charlie Brown style. And that would be so the candles could fit without burning the branches above them. And the chimney sweep is for good luck, and we'd always have that so the house won't burn down. From all the messages we've received, we hear the same sentiments multiplied. Dad was wicked smart, witty, funny, kind, and he loved teaching. For me, he was all of those and many more. From Dad, I learned to love nature, science, snow, birds, wildflowers, rocks and minerals, camping, swimming in the ocean, travel, and adventure. Also practical things like how to change the oil and change a flat tire and how to fix things, because Dad could fix practically anything. So a little bit more about his career. He studied electrical engineering at Cornell. He was in ROTC, went into the Navy for a few years, and then he was recruited by IBM. He worked on many top secret computer projects, including the original GPS satellites. He worked at The Rock, also called the Underground Pentagon in Pennsylvania. Now, I think the official name is Raven Rock. And if I'm not mistaken, we moved to Germany so he could help install the first CIA computers on the Army base in Germany. And he also would travel to New Jersey a lot in the 80s, I think. And I'm guessing he was working on nuclear submarine computer systems. He never really told us. He was always quite humble in his endeavors. So we started coming here in 72. Let's see. Skip. Things, he led Spring Bee. He was on night patrol, which was volunteers would come and lock up all the doors at night and make sure all the lights were off. He did that for years and years, and I think they would rotate weeks. He helped renovate the Chalice House, which is up on the hill. It's it's the parsonage, I guess. He came for years, even during COVID, to the science and religion group that he just would read and bring questions, and he loved that group so much. As a kid, sometimes I would join him on the Spring Bee classes that he taught, and this was like a 6-week session in the spring that you could do softball. So bird watching at the time was like, softball was much more fun at the time, but sometimes I would end up going with him on these trips. We would go in search of the ephemeral wildflowers, and now I do this all the time, so thank you, Dad. And other times we'd go on bird watching trips, and there'd be all these people with their binoculars, and there it is, and I would never see the bird. And then, one time, this indigo bunting came flying down, landed on a fence post like 6 feet in front of me. The sun hit it, and it lit up this iridescent blue, almost like a fluorescent mineral, but not quite. But blue has been my favorite color ever since. When we were kids, Dad made snow days so incredibly exciting. He would take us out sledding late at night, I'm guessing probably 5 p.m. because it was dark. We'd trudge up to the junior high. He'd hang the Coleman lantern on the fence post, and we'd sled for what seemed like hours. He was a master at making snow animals, including giant hippopotamuses, and we would ride those for days. He would take the hose and spray it on the hippo so it would ice up, and he would spray it on the driveway so that would ice up, and we'd have this nice little sledding thing for a long time. I will always think of Dad when it snows, and even in college, when it would snow up in upstate New York, I would call him, "Dad, it's snowing, and he would get excited with me. We are blessed with many wonderful family members and friends who are like family that we call them aunts and uncles. A favorite memory of the Gourmet Club family Christmas gathering was when we made a croquembouche. This required spun sugar, and Dad engineered a tool that looked more like a torture device. It was like on a long pole with a board and nails sticking out of it, like long nails. And we flung strands, like you'd swing it around with the hot sugar, and we just flung sugar all over the kitchen, all over the ceiling in my mom's kitchen. And of course it would work perfectly because my dad made it. Okay, one of my favorite travel experiences with Dad was when my parents came to visit me in New Mexico, and we went on a grand tour of the Southwest. The best day was when we went to see petroglyphs outside of Sedona. It required a 30-minute drive on a dirt road. After much debate about the legality and wisdom of taking the rental car on a dirt road, I got my way and off we went. As soon as we pulled up, we noticed multiple light green U.S. government vans parked at the entrance. It turned out there was an international petroglyphs conference happening in Flagstaff, and the world-renowned experts were on a field trip. I immediately asked if we could tag along on their tour. So there we were, the only novices and the expert on one particular petroglyph, started talking about how we could determine the age based on the mineral deposits that had leached down over and under and the paintings. And, well, for anyone who knew Dad, you can guess where this is going. Dad started explaining the geology and all the different minerals and how, obviously, the expert was, indeed, incorrect. And the layers were opposite of what he thought. Mom and I immediately crouched back and tried to slink away, but we knew it was obvious once Dad explained his logic, he was definitely right. It was a tad humiliating and quite hilarious and so very Dad. I'm not sure that expert would agree, but Dad was only trying to help and teach. I'll end with this. Our Durland ancestor immigrated here in 1652. This is a paragraph from Records of the Durland Family in America, written in 1898. For 3 centuries, the Durland family has consisted of good people, with scarcely an exception, intelligent, patriotic, sturdy, industrious, God-fearing people, plain and unpretentious as a rule, and animated by little worldly ambition, but characterized by exceptional vitality, strength of will, and stability of character. Yep. Dad was indeed a good Durland. Today is the winter solstice. Here's to brightening days. Let's all say his favorite toast together. If you don't know it, here's to it. Let's do it together. Here's to it. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate the life of my dad, George, Pappy George, Grandpa George, Sonny. And as I was doing this list of different names we have for my dad, I was reminded of one when we were up in Franklin, New Jersey, and we ran into some of his high school friends. And the women, his high school friends, these women were calling him Sparks. Because he was always into electronics. So anyway, my dad comes from a long line of George Durlands with just a middle name changing. So he was George Sanford Durland. His father was George Reeve Durland. Before that was George Mapes Durland. And this went on for several generations, I'm pretty sure. So when I was born, obviously I'm not George. So when I was born, my mom, Elsie, thought it would be nice to continue the tradition and name me George. My dad, in his wit and wisdom, replied, "Sure, as long as our son's middle name is Oglethorpe." George Oglethorpe Durland. Initials, right? G-O-D. Hence, I'm Eric. And so began my life with my pretty amazing dad. Some of my fondest memories include Dad teaching me his love of music, reading, travel. investigating the natural world, fishing, sailing with my dad, especially at Smith Beach on the Chesapeake. He definitely started my love of water and boating. He also taught me how to drive calmly and clearly, regardless of what he was actually thinking about my teenage driving skills. So Dad and Mom taught me to love not only cooking and food, but that it really tastes best when shared with friends. They started the Gourmet Club, some couples who would gather at each other's houses to drink wine, prepare amazing gourmet meals, talk, laugh, plan adventures, and oh yeah, drink some more wine. And there were other friends groups as well, gathered around food, travel, and the love for life. These first, second, and now third generation Gourmet Club members and friends groups remain close friends and foodies, with many of them here today and online. We already mentioned this, but Dad and Mom brought me and Karen here to Cedar Lane in 1972 after they came back from Germany. And that's fostered my lifelong UU membership. So I'm still a UU here. Dad was always steady as a rock, supporting me in some of my wild ideas. When I hiked the Appalachian Trail for 6 months, he came and hiked with me for a small portion, and thank goodness, because what would have taken me an hour took us 5 hours. He had to stop and look at everything. At one of these stops, alongside a grove of giant cinnamon ferns, a deer suddenly popped its head up right next to us, about 5 feet away. It was pretty magical and wonderful. Let's see. So Dad was filled with wonder, always with a twinkle in his eye. You wanted to sit next to him at dinner parties so you could hear him quietly make some hilarious observation in his subtle way. Dad was my rock, with just a little bit of a pun here intended, since Dad was totally a rock guy. He loved rocks. He was an integral member of the Gem, Lapidary, and Mineral Society of Montgomery County, AKA the Rock Club, for 50 plus years. I remember going with him when I was really young, when it used to be at Hoover. So for the Rock Club people here, I've been going there as long as I've been alive, just about. He particularly loved fluorescent rocks and minerals. As a child, he discovered them when his father, a chemist working at the Franklin Zinc Mine in Franklin, New Jersey, started collecting an incredible mix of fluorescent minerals, many only found at that location. He ended up traveling the world collecting more and more rocks, including one year meeting me in Tucson for the world's largest rock show. He gave countless demonstrations of fluorescent minerals, introducing countless audiences to the magical wonder of fluorescence. These rocks that look like, well, any old rock, under an ultraviolet light suddenly glow orange, green, red, purple, any and every color. These rocks, like this rock here, when I shine an ultraviolet light on it, it glows blue. And that, in a nutshell, is the rock-solid and wonderful magical essence that was and remains my dad.
Thank you, Jasmine. That was beautiful. Part of scheduling the service today with holidays and travel and everything, one of the main priorities was music and to make sure that Jasmine was available. And I understand that she picked that piece and in particular challenged herself, and that was phenomenal. Thank you very much. So hello, good afternoon. My name is Allison Talbot Durland. I'm the wife of Eric and daughter-in-law of George. When I was reflecting on George's life last week, we were getting lots of lovely sentiments of sympathy, and one in particular came from lifelong friends Marcia and Joel Goldstein. Their card captured succinctly the essence of George, and so we asked them to say more. Lifelong neighbors of the Durlands, Marcia and Joel have relocated to the West Coast and cannot be in here in person, though I'm pretty sure they're watching, so hi Marcia, hi Joel. And so it's a pleasure that I'm going to read their words, but I also want to say that Bud and Donna Ronceville were also to be here and could not make it, but I'm also pretty sure they're watching, so hey Donna, hey Bud. All right. So Remembering George Durland, December 2025, by Marcia and Joel Goldstein. It often happens that there is joy in the midst of sorrow, and sorrow in the midst of joy. So we find ourselves in a holiday season having to acknowledge the loss of our good friend George. This annual celebration of joy and hope brings together family and friends to share love and goodwill. This makes it a fitting time to celebrate George's life. His life exemplified the spirit of love and joy and goodwill. We met George when Karen and our daughter Lauren were in second grade, which puts him near the top of longtime friends. I shouldn't mention it, but the girls are now more than 50 years older than they were when we first met the Durlands. So 5 decades of shared good times went by in a hurry. We think of many things when we think of George. He was a generous host, a dependable friend, a kind and quiet man with a sly sense of humor. When we use words like generous and dependable, we can back them up. Consider this: for many winters and under many weather conditions, George picked us up at Dulles Airport when we returned from visiting Joel's parents in California in the wintertime. He dropped us at our house, where we'd put our bags down, turn on the heat, and then head back over to the Durlands' house, where Elsie had prepared a beautiful meal, of course, and George met us at the door with glasses of wine. Who does things like that? George had a great sense of adventure, and we were fortunate to have many outings with him and Elsie on both coasts and in between. One of the marvelous things about George was his encyclopedic knowledge of all things natural, as we've been talking about today. It will not surprise you to hear that Elsie and Joel could not walk at the pace slow enough for Marcia and George. Marcia's excuse was lack of stamina, but there was an added benefit, because that meant Marcia got to walk with George, who, on the other hand, had to take the time to examine and discuss every plant, rock, bird, tree, and flower that we passed. He had insatiable knowledge and the soul of a teacher, and he always has a new insight to offer on any subject. At this point in our lives, many people are in a category called someone we haven't seen in a while. We were fortunate to have a chance to see George in September. We will keep him and Elsie in the haven't seen in a while category. They live there in our warm memories of good times spent together, where we can visit them whenever we want. Thank you.
star and wake up where the clouds are far behind. Where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Skies are blue and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. If happy little bluebirds fly above the rainbow high, oh,
It's so beautiful. The poet Thomas Nault writes, "Now these laughing eyes are closed in that long sleep, which is the soundest and the last of all. Shroud not my limbs with funeral pall, nor mock my rest with vainest prayers, nor weep. But take the husk of me to where the sunshine plays, and if you see the red of western skies, or feel the clean, soft rain, or hear the music that we loved, then let your heart beat fast for me, and I shall not be dead." Laughing Eyes, that is George Durland. And not just because he laughed, though he did, but because he carried something in his face that let you know he was paying attention and enjoying what he noticed. Almost every Sunday after service, George would come up to me and ask, "Are you behaving?" I'd say no, and I'd ask, "Are you?" And George would pause. Then he'd say with that straight face and that twinkle in his eye, "Of course." Pause. Not. That pause was classic George. a little mischief, a little timing, a reminder that seriousness has its limits. And the thing is, the older I get, the more I realize that humor like that is not small. It is a way of moving through the world without hardening. It is a way of staying human. George's favorite role, as we heard over time, became teacher. Not the loud kind, not the lecture kind, the quiet kind. Karen put it beautifully. George did not always give advice in words, he showed you. He would wonder with you and paint things out, a mushroom, a wildflower, a bird call, a rock most people would step over without noticing. He had patience for the slow learning that happens outside, the kind you cannot rush. And that spirit of teaching was not a casual hobby for him. He poured himself into it. As we heard, he was deeply involved in the Rock Club, serving as president, sharing his knowledge through demonstrations and displays, and more than one person said some version of the same thing. I learned so much from him. He taught me things I never knew before. That was George, a teacher in a quiet way, a helper in a quiet way, the kind of person who would show up and help you tear out your carpet or fix something or figure something out, not with fanfare, but with presence. And then there was the music. George and Elsie, lovers of music. Karen told a story about the pianist Brian Gans at Strathmore, someone they had followed for years and years, and how George was so excited to meet him after the concert that they stayed really late and then went home. But he was happy that he got to meet him. And because George was George, there was also the running commentary. After intermission, he started asking more than once, "Is it over yet?" George would actually say that during the service, and Elsie would shush him. And once he told me after the service, I couldn't hear anything, but it was beautiful. Karen told another story, the one that we heard about near Sedona, the petroglyphs. And George telling with real sincerity that looked older than the other one, and then kept going, contradicting the experts, with Karen and Elsie slinking back. That was George, curious, confident, unimpressed by titles, looking closely and witnessing to what he saw. And even in his later years, that steadiness and that care did not leave him. The staff where he lived came to love him. On one of my visits, I learned there was more than one George on his floor, and one of them was known for wandering off. When I arrived, George Durland was not in his room. I found him out in the hallway, not wandering, helping the staff look for the other George. And somewhere underneath all of that, the humor, the teaching, the music, the steady helpfulness was love. Love that was real. Love for his children, his grandchildren, and Elsie. George and Elsie loved each other deeply. Not a plastic love or a performative love, a love that could handle ordinary. George sometimes drove Elsie crazy. He did. And she loved him fiercely anyway. And their love had room for laughter, room for honesty, room for irritation and forgiveness, room for devotion that did not need to be announced. So today, we give thanks. for laughing eyes, for a steady presence, for a life that taught more by pointing than by preaching, for curiosity that never retired, for humor that kept things human, for love that endured. And now, as we come to the end of our service, I want to offer one more voice. Wendell Berry writes, "When despair for the world grows in me and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free." That feels like George. Not an ending, not goodbye forever, just a resting. So as the music begins, let Jupiter carry you there, into memory, into gratitude, into the grace of the world. Let it lift what words no longer need to hold. Let it remind us to look up, to notice beauty, to laugh when we can, to pause before answering. And if somewhere in the middle of it all you hear George after service asking whether you are behaving, feel free to smile, because he already knows the answer. Go gently, George. We love you, and we thank you.